2021. Or as I would like to call it, 2K20, New Game Plus. Because let's be real, 2021 is probably going to be just as shitty, just as dumpy, and probably a lot more challenging than 2020. But if you've cultivated the skills and expertise that helped you tread along 2020, then I think you're going to have a good time. And that brings us to episode number 310, the SkyLounge podcast, the genesis of the existential evolution of a meme lord, best of 2020. And as I mentioned in the last episode, Kung Flu, the Chinese government and NWO billionaire globalist pedophile sponsored control mechanism, was probably the greatest, worst thing that's ever happened in my life, where I recognize that it fucking sucks that this shit dropped and the world came to a retarded halt, and a lot of countries kind of committed suicide from sheer incompetence, I suppose. I mean, corruption at this point is kind of like chump change for these goddamn fucks up top. But suffice it to say, 2020 was a very chaotic year. But as I mentioned in the last episode, within the chaos, within the darkness, I found light. And not within the religious sense, but within a more personal enlightenment sense. And honestly, it's curious because 2020, as I say, it is the greatest year that I've experienced in my lifetime so far. I talked about how I was going to mention maybe top 20 moments, top 10 moments in the last episode, but when it came down to it, I whittled the shit down to the top 3 list. And it's crazy how little and insignificant these things seem, but within the context of my personal life, my philosophy, my views on the world and people and all these things, they are the most significant, greatest thing that's happened to me, right? And I would say maybe thus far, maybe in my life so far, and perhaps it could be hyperbole if I go with the latter, but I'll tell you what, I'll let you be the fucking judge. And I don't care how you fucking judge it, to be honest, because to me, these top 3 moments in 2020, I will never fucking forget them in my life, ever. And number 3, and we're going to do this shit in reverse because, of course, we're going to say the best for last. A little bit of suspense. Not really, but you'll know what the fuck number 1 is eventually when we're talking about this shit. But number 3 has to be the Dodgers winning the World Series. And I know in the grand scheme of things, a fucking baseball team winning a goddamn championship means nothing, right? And I know I'm upsetting a lot of people saying that, but let's be honest, man. Sports in the grand scheme of life, it's very insignificant. It's very small. Yeah, I get it. Unless you work in the sport, yada, yada, yada. But to the general public, to the average Joe, like you and me, I don't know about you, but personally, me, it's nothing. It's nothing but a form of escapism, nothing but a form of entertainment. It's nothing but a form of joy and relief and sometimes sorrow, misery, and depression. But it's entertainment nonetheless. But somehow this seemingly insignificant thing had such a huge impact, and it's crazy, the paradoxical nature of enjoying sports, right? But I'll tell you what, man, the paradox and maybe the origins of all this comes from me being a Dodgers fan since I came to this country in 1998 and watching this team struggle for, 22 years, obviously, but seeing them just relentlessly choke, especially over the last half decade, and finally seeing them in a crazy pandemic year where sports had a hiatus in the middle of March and it came back around September and We all found this new appreciation for sports ball. I mean, it's so crazy that the Dodgers actually won something in 2020. And I gotta be honest, man, I was kind of shocked when the Dodgers made it to the World Series in 2020 because for those of you who don't know, this year the Major League of Baseball decided that, hey, we're going to negotiate late between the players union, the ownership, and all the fucking mediators in between that we're going to delay the season, delay until inevitably we, you know, fucking funnel down a on average 162 game per team, you know, per season sport to a 60 game season and figure out a postseason format as we go along. I mean, this shit was it was kind of a joke to start with, right? Especially if you're a fucking baseball fan, you know exactly how this shit was, boiling down around August or July when people were still, was it July or June? But when Major League Baseball between Rob Manfred Players Union, then you got vocal guys like Trevor Bauer talking about, oh, there's still a dispute. We don't know what's going on. It's like, oh my fucking God, how much more can this league fuck up with? I mean, clearly you already fucked up in the offseason with the Houston Asterisks and their blatant cheating and nothing being done about it. And you just think that, oh God, like this sport is done. It's not going to start. I mean, certainly I sat here on the podcast multiple times talking about how this fucking league is done. It's a dumpster fire. But lo and behold, 60 game season plopped out right in your face. And the Dodgers were absolutely fantastic. I mean, 43 wins. And boys and girls, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have the figures right in front of me. I'm doing this shit off the top of my head. So if I'm wrong, let me know that I'm wrong. But dude, the Dodgers are absolutely amazing in a 60 game season. And of course, people are going to say asterisk season, that didn't count, but fuck you. Then go back to 2017, fucking erase that World Series against the Astros. Don't even give it to the fucking Dodgers and call it a day. If you're going to fucking call this season an asterisk for the 2020 season for the Dodgers and everybody else, I don't know where the fuck you get the gulls from not talking about 2017. But regardless, the Dodgers were able to trek through just kind of this gridiron gauntlet, right? Not really gridiron. That's football, kids. But faux pas analogies aside, baseball was tough. Right? When it comes down to it, trying to be the best in the sport despite the expanded format where, yes, you had more teams coming into the playoffs, but you had a grimier grind to get to the big dance in the World Series. And the wild card series, you had to win 2 games, best of 3. And in the divisional series, the next round, you had the best of 5, which you had to win 3 games. And by the time you're in the championship and the World Series, I mean, those are best of 7s, both of them, right? So, win 4. And really, for the Dodgers, watching them through the wild card series and the divisional series, I thought, cool, sweeps. I mean, the Slam Diego Padres were chest thumping and saying, oh, we're the best. Oh, yeah, Tatis, Machado. Yeah. We don't have our best guys. That's what you beat us. Okay, whatever, bro. Lots of excuses. That's what I'm hearing. So you got fucking terrified in the offseason now, and you're setting up all these players like Yu Darvish and trading for Blake Snell. But, that's none of my business. T-sip. But the Dodgers stumbling, I would say, to start off the championship series was kind of a bummer for me. And by the time they were down in the series 3-1, and I was watching Game 4 at my brother's house, I thought the series was done because they had to play 7 consecutive games if the series even went to 7. And I thought, there's no fucking way these guys, down 3-1, are going to do anything about it. But Game 5, Dodgers come out and win. Game 6, Dodgers come out and grab a very, very by the balls win. Then we get into game 7. The Dodgers have never been in a situation when they were down 3-1 and they have forced a game 7. The Atlanta Braves have never choked a 3-1 series lead. But lo and behold, the curse of Atlanta is real. In some way, somehow, the Dodgers make it to their 3rd World Series in the past 4 years. And at that point, I just believed that it was our time. It wasn't just Dave Roberts saying it. And as skeptical as I was, I was fully on board with the idea that, we're going to win. We are going to win at Globe Life Stadium in Dallas, or Arlington, Texas. Clayton Kershaw is going to get his ring. And this fucking franchise is going to finally know what winning feels like for the first time in goddamn decades. And I know getting to a World Series, winning division titles for 8 years in a row, it's great. It's awesome. But dude, World Series is a different beast altogether. Winning an actual championship is a whole fucking thing together. And clearly, the Rays did not make it easy. Credit where credit is due, kids. And I hope the history books and the fans never forget how solid that Rays team was. And of course, we all, remember the infamous Game 6 where Blake Snell gets pulled and now he's in San Diego because pretty much the friction between management, probably not the best of things, but Dodgers going to the World Series. It was a fucking shocker, man. Julio Urias, last 2 innings, 2.5 if I'm not mistaken, but kneeling down on the ground. I watch that clip every now and then. And I'm going to be honest, I watch that clip maybe 2-3 times a week. I still get chills. I still get goosebumps. And it's just so wild to me that, again, such a thing like sports, where it's relatively, in the broad span of life, very insignificant, how significantly it sways your emotions. It funks with your soul. And it's still crazy that I still call the Dodgers World Series champions. And I'm actually rocking the World Series Los Angeles Dodgers t-shirt right now. Good old neck brand, where, yes, I'm pretty sure the sweatshop children in China or Vietnam made this. But it's just wild to me to think that the World Series is the Dodgers to defend in the upcoming 21 season. And, it's not just the Dodgers winning the championship. Of course, my Lakers won the championship, which was fucking awesome. But it's this idea that without sports ball, for a good number of months, I was bored as all hell. I was lost. I didn't really know what to do on a day-to-day basis, except play video games, which, video games are still awesome. But it got down to this point where, that hiatus of not having any sports really makes you appreciate what sports is. It's very simple. In any discipline, it's a simple child's game that grown men play, that get paid lots of money, and us consumers get to watch them compete. And it teaches us a lot of life because it's set in this strict binary sense of winning and losing, which doesn't really happen in life. But whether it be the philosophical implications of sports or just the fucking pure beatdown of a motherfucker, maybe like a UFC match or a goddamn posterizing move in the local league of Chinese basketball, you get to really appreciate sports ball for what it is, especially for not having it for a couple of months. And yeah, the restart really makes you appreciate, what you don't have, obviously. But to come out of the hiatus and to go through the restart and then Lakers winning a championship, Dodgers winning a championship, it was so fucking wild to just experience that. And that is all crazy when you think about how sports really for the longest time in my life wasn't really a significant part of it, right? And I will openly admit to that. And I have no shame in that whatsoever. And what's curious is, before the fascination of sports and anything else, I'm a pretty fairly decent public speaker, not overly shy when I need to be, but I'm still an introvert, relatively speaking. But the idea of the podcast was really something that I had for a long time, and yeah, obviously, starting that shit in 2016, I've always wanted to just fucking lay out my truth and just talk my shit. But somewhere along the line, around 2019 and early last year in 2020, I kind of lost the flair for making podcast shit. I did. Won't lie to you and say, oh yeah, I was just having a little bit of a bump in the road. No, like I was actually like, fuck this, fuck everything. I don't want to do shit. But then came 30 for 30 and 30, which is my number 2 moment in the year 2020, where, yeah, in June, I decided to say, fuck it. Let's do 30 episodes, for in 30 days, and let's make it 30 minutes each. So 30 for 30 and 30. And I feel June really became a place of, for me, my podcast and content renaissance, where I can definitively say that point right there, June 2020, that whole month was where I flipped the switch in my head and something finally kind of clicked where I know what I want to do with this shit. And it's curious because it's, as I always say, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the adulation. It's not about recognition. It's not about that shit. It's about sending a message. It's about laying out my truth. It's about being eloquent enough to speak out big points, but simple enough to whittle that shit down to layman shit, right? Something like that. And yeah, 30 for 30 and 30 really kind of helped me groove along into where we're trying to go, right? Make this shit just an empire, so to speak, and the small step in the 1,000 fucking staircase where you have to keep going up. And I feel 30 for 30 and 30 was really that first step of going up, where for years, maybe in retrospect, it's just been crawling, right? But I feel like that really helped me set it off for myself in the future to what I want to do with this podcast and where we could take this podcast. And I don't really want to definitively give any sort of answer, any sort of, I suppose, vision to what that's going to be, right? Even next week. Because I really do want to keep working out the kinks on this shit every day, every week, every episode, whatever have you. And it's curious because for a while I was okay with status quo, stagnancy, but somewhere along the line, yeah, it just kind of hit me that, nah, you could do better. You could do better. And it's okay to have an off day or two. It's okay. But own up to it, accept it, and rectify it. Get better. Get good. And you know what? It's curious because that shit doesn't happen. None of that shit happens. None of the appreciation, none of the shit talking to myself, none of that happens without the number one moment, which is red pilling. Yeah, I red pilled the fuck out of myself last year, 2020. It's the greatest fucking thing I've ever done. Existential enlightenment. And I went through this shit in detail in yesterday's episode. And to briefly go through it, red pilling is a process of, giving yourself the truth. Where it's a reference to the movie Matrix, where the character Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is given the choice of taking the blue pill or the red pill by Lawrence Fishburne's character. Jesus Christ. Morpheus. I was forgetting the name for a minute. But the blue pill is basically something to swallow up and accepting, reality, whatever, under the illusion and going back to normal, right? Whereas a red pill, you stay in Wonderland, as Morpheus says, and you see how deep the rabbit hole goes, essentially meaning you learn the truth of what the world actually is and see for yourself the truth of reality and in life and whatever. And it sucks because Neo goes through a quest, the hero's journey in the Matrix and yada, yada, yada. And yeah, that's essentially what the red pill is. And I know when fucking normies hear this shit, they always think it's some sort of fucking self-grandizing speech to justify, being an asshole or whatever. But it's like, no, man. Red pilling is essentially just giving yourself the truth and letting yourself figure out the truth continuously and constantly. The quest to be better every day, right? And man, it's not fun. As I say, red pilling isn't fun. It's not for everybody. But if you're sick of living in the illusion, if you're sick of living in the programmed world, yeah, red pill the fuck out of yourself. Unplug yourself, man. And that came in the form of many things for me in 2020. I cut all the stream service that I have except VRV, which at this point, like, I'm debating because I don't really watch new anime anymore either. I don't really watch new shit anymore. So VRV at this point, I'm really debating to cancel it or not. But majority of things I don't have. Like Netflix, I canceled. Disney Plus, canceled. Hulu, canceled. Jesus Christ. Is there anything else? I know down the line cable is going to be next. But yeah. It's trying to unplug your brain from the predisposed, I suppose, joy you get out of your, constantly fed, shit that you're so used to. For me, it was always the IP that, forced, recognition or, childhood nostalgia like Star Wars or MCU stuff. And it's not to call it childish or anything like that. Far from it. I still hold those mediums and a lot of the influences of the past MCU things or comic books that I've read in my lifetime. I still hold them as something that makes me me. I mean, they're the foundation of what makes me me. But, being able to detach yourself emotionally from these things, from the past things that make you you, and really assess what it is. And in this landscape where mainstream media, big tech shit is just poisoning your brain with garbage, you gotta fucking unplug. And red pilling, man, it's again, it's an arduous process, but I would tell you personally, it's worth it. It is one of those things where I will tell you that, like I said in the last episode, your truth is left up to you to discover. But when you find out that there is more to this life than fast food, Netflix, and other trash that mainstream media tries to force on you, you'll be shocked how infinite the world actually is. Crazy, right? I know. But that's 2020. The best year in my life. And the best thing they provided me was top 3 moments. And I'm never going to forget it, man. Still can't fucking forget the World Series rings for my Dodgers. And yeah, I know the Lakers won, but honestly, there's a really cynical part of me where I watch a local league of Chinese basketball and the landscape of how things go with the Lakers and LeBron James and everything else. I thought, oh, cool. The refs are probably going to help us out along the way, and the script is probably written for the Lakers to win the championship. I said that during the preview before the bubble kicked off, but regardless, my teams are champs. The podcast is more or less back, which, I mean, we're going to try to get a more consistent schedule down the way. But yeah, red pilling is a constant process, kids. Those all came from the glorious year of 2020. And as we move on into 2021, I hope we have more fun. Although, yes, I do hope that most people find peace and solace in themselves. But personally, I want that New Game Plus shit to be real. Because ultimately, I love 2020. I'm going to miss 2020. But let's kick off New Game Plus. Let's go. And on the next episode of the Sky Lounge podcast, we're going to be catching up with all the piggy skin picks. That means we are going to be doing all the fucking shit from week 11 to week 17, which basically means I'm going to just skim over shit for all 32 teams, talk about playoff matches, lottery picks, etc. So that should be a fun one. At least for me. Don't know about you, but hey, it's about me, motherfucker. Yeah, at least I'm honest about it. But kids, that'll do it for me. So follow me at the Sky Lounge. You know, SoundCloud, iTunes. Oh my God. We got to figure out this goddamn outro. I said this for 3 episodes straight. And I kind of feel embarrassed for being repetitious and being an absolute cunt about it. But yeah, still rekinking things, still trying to find the perfection in an imperfect process of figuring this thing out every day. But that'll do it for me for this episode, kids. So until next time, fuck off. Ugh.